Chevron McGee.
Recording in progress.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen, it's 7:01 PM, and I am calling the March 26th, 2024 Planning Board meeting to order. I will take roll. So, board members, when I call your name, would you please indicate that you're present? Pat Norton.
Present.
Jonathan Poor.
Jonathan Poor, present.
Bill Wheaton.
Bill Wheaton, present.
Emil Dahlquist.
Emil Dahlquist, present.
Beth Herr.
Present.
Rick Mitchell.
Present.
Matt Hamill.
Present.
And Marnie Crouch, present. We do have a full agenda tonight, but as a matter of courtesy, I am going to call the two A&R matters before we turn over our discussion to the athletic field projects. So we have two A&R requests, both of which are pertain to amendments to requests that have already been approved. So Patrick, if you would be so kind as to read item 2, and we will hear from the applicant, 250 Cutler Road first.
In accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 81, the applicant, 250 Cutler Road LLC at 14 Boardman Lane, Hamilton, Mass., is seeking a Form A approval not required endorsement from the Planning Board for multiple parcels at 250 Cutler Road, which is Assessor's Map 30, Lot 2. The existing 293,135 square feet lot is to be divided into 3 parcels to be known as lots A, B, and C. The collective property is located within the RA zoning district.
Thank you.
Would you state your name, please, and your address?
Sure. James Longley, 14 Boardman Lane in Hamilton. Yeah, so we came in a few months ago and got the A&R approved for these properties. We moved the plot line slightly, about 3 feet. And we're just hoping to get a reapproval on the conforming lots. And then no other changes were made in the perimeters of the project.
Do any board members have any questions?
Could you just describe where exactly the change is? The drawings weren't terrifically clear to me. So
Yeah, there was a deck that we didn't take into account when we originally did the initial drawing. So it's right next to the house that's already on the property.
So the setback line now is adjusted so it just kisses the deck? Is that what I'm seeing?
Pushed further away from the deck, but yeah,
Right.
Yep, it's that line.
Yeah, okay, I see, thank you.
Yep, sure.
So it impacted all 3 lots? Yes, no?
The middle lot was already conform. We had room to move it. It was the lot with the house that we needed to make the slight adjustment on.
Okay. The writing is so small, it's hard to see.
Any other questions? Any discussion? No. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the, is this a new A&R, Patrick, or an amendment to the A&R?
It would be a new A&R since they're eliminating the prior one.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion to approve the A&R request of 250 Cutler Road.
So moved.
Seconded?
Yes, so when I call your name, would you please indicate that you assent to the A&R request of 250 Cutler Road? Pat Norton?
Aye.
Jonathan Poor?
Jonathan Poor, aye.
Bill Wheaton?
Bill Wheaton, aye.
Emil Dahlquist?
Emil Dahlquist, aye.
Beth Herr?
Aye.
And Marnie Crouch, aye.
And Rick Mitchell, aye.
Oh,
He's
excuse
still
me,
here.
Rick.
He's still here.
Gone but not forgotten.
You're not gone yet, and you'll never be forgotten. So, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
And our next matter is another A&R amendment. Now, is this one an amendment or a new one?
The applicant is here to advise us.
Okay. I believe that's Mr. Alsop.
It's going to be a new A&R.
Oh, could
speak
you?
at the podium, please.
I'm Joe Grillo from Hayes Engineering, representing Jeff Alsop. So the original A&R plan divided into 5 lots, A, B, C, and D and E. This is doing a alteration, which you can see in the red and the blue for the new and the old between lot C, D. It's now lot C.1 and D.1. We had to do this for a side setback requirement.
So just to clarify, it moves the line closer to the tennis court and the pool that are slated to be removed, and those are still being removed, is that correct?
That is correct.
Just curious, why did you change it where you did down by the tennis court, and why not further, closer to the building?
You wanna speak on that, Jeff?
It was a reaction to,
Jeff.
yeah, sorry. That was a response to mature plantings on the property.
Oh.
So we moved it so that they could be
Yeah.
undivided and taken care of.
Right.
Up there, yes, yep.
Any other questions by board members?
No?
I will entertain a motion to approve the A&R request.
Wait a minute.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. Did you have a question?
I did, yeah.
Oh,
Bob Gray, 935 Bay Road. My question is, this is all under conservative, I'm looking at the right-
conservation restrictions.
Right. So why are we making these up into lots if you can't build on the lots because of the restrictions? I just doesn't make any sense to me, so can you tell me why?
So we actually have a building envelope. It's this dashed line here. So
Right.
they're allowed to build in this area. There's this second dashed building envelope here. They're allowed to build in that area.
Yeah, I understand that, but why do you have lots like Lot E, Lot D, Lot C that you can't build on? Why are you dividing it up like that?
So lots A, B, C, and D all have places you can build on them. So this would be the portion of the buildable lot C. That's a portion of buildable lot E. Sorry.
All right, what about this, Lot E? Why that?
Just, it was almost like leftover land, you could say. And we could have.
It makes no sense.
Well, if you gave it all to one person, that's a lot of extra taxable land they probably wouldn't want.
You can't build on it, but you want to divide it up.
I mean, there's nothing saying you're not allowed to divide unbuildable land.
It doesn't make any sense.
If I might say something,
board
I
thinks the
think
same
he
thing.
is allowed to build on the conserved land
Really?
within the building envelope. So there's every reason for him to want to subdivide it. It's just that the houses is only going to be two new houses, and their locations are restricted to the circled areas. So, I mean, he's doing anything that's allowed, and I mean, I have a piece of property that's conserved, except for a circled area where I can add, you know, a garage or do other things to my house, but you can't do anything outside of that area, and that's the way it is with these lots.
All right, I have another question also on Lot A and B. I see where the line of the envelope is right here. This is the line of the envelope, right, you can build here. The approved lots go out beyond and include some of the restricted land.
Correct.
So does that mean that you're only gonna be able to build on behind that envelope and not out?
Yeah, towards the street. You can
Okay.
build between the street and that envelope.
So are these lots big enough to allow for a house and a septic system and everything, knowing that you can't go onto the restricted area?
Our client has gone through to get the variances, so they've been approved lots, and there will be enough room for building and a septic.
Really? All right, that's all my questions. Bill, you got any?
Oh, certainly.
Hi, John Raymond, 62 Gardner Street. I have some questions concerning, again, the easement. The easement states conservation restriction does state that there's to be no digging outside the envelope. There's to be no utilities outside the envelope. So my question is, first off, has the board seen the conservation restriction easement from the Searses that was put in place to prevent any development on this property? Has anybody looked at that? Has it been brought to your attention?
It has not been brought to our attention.
Okay. I'm looking at a plan that was on file at the Registry of Deeds for lots C and D. It talks about a proposed 30-foot wide utility and access easement. The conservation restriction emphatically states only maintenance and repair can be done for the utilities that service the property as it is now. Is that something that the planning board needs to take into account for the subdivision approval?
There are two elements within an A&R approval that planning boards are required to act on. Number one is access. Number two is frontage. All other approvals, all other elements, even including zoning elements are not part of
Okay.
the A&R approval process whatsoever.
So who has the determination of enforcing this conservation easement?
That would more likely be a check and balance that would take place as a building permit came to the building inspector.
Right.
So the building inspector has the authority to deny a building
Well-
permit?
Well, the beneficiary of the easement would
Okay, that would be the
ha-
Greenbelt Association.
Yeah, they would have the standing to object to any infringement on their easement.
Okay, all right.
So
thank you.
that's the Essex County Trail Association is the beneficiary of that easement?
The Greenbelt
Oh, the
Association
Greenbelt, okay.
is the beneficiary.
Okay, yes, so if that easement were to be infringed, once there was some type of a plan for a building with its associated utilities, then they would have standing to object.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions, concerns, discussions? Then I will entertain a motion to approve the A&R request.
Questions on Zoom?
Oh, thank you. No, I don't see any. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the A&R request of Jeffrey
That does
Allison.
sound like there's an issue with access. If one of the two things is frontage and access, and Greenbelt Association holds the easement, I feel like it's, access is a thing for us to consider, is it not?
They have access.
They have access to
Access as far as
Frontage
frontage
frontage.
goes.
Yeah.
That's all we are required to.
Okay.
So, I mean, it may be that there's no access in terms of utilities
Yeah.
once someone proposes a building, and I'm only speculating, I have no idea. I would assume that that's taken care of. And so, but that's outside of our purview at the moment. It's when and the building inspector would be involved with that.
Okay.
So you try again?
I'll try again with the motion.
You want to make a motion again?
I was just going to read the,
Well, I make the motion then to approve the ANR 25 Gardner, ANR approval not required request.
Second?
So when I call your name, would you indicate whether you approve of this A&R request? Pat Norton,
Pat Norton, aye.
Jonathan Poor,
Jonathan Poor, aye.
Bill Wheaton,
Bill Wheaton, aye.
Emil Dahlquist,
Abel Dahlquist, aye.
Beth Herr,
Aye.
Rick Mitchell,
Aye.
and Marty Crouch, aye. Thank you all. So we will turn to the hearing on the board deliberations on the site plan review application and stormwater management application of the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District. The planning board did receive a memorandum from Ann Giroux, and we did also receive a response from Tom Houston. Ms. Giroux has asked the planning board to reopen the public hearing, but before we even consider that request, I would ask Emil Dahlquist, who is a licensed architect, to comment on that. I think he has the capacity to opine as to what is transpiring here, and it might obviate the need of reopening the public hearing.
Yeah, as I understood the request, that it was pretty simple. It was reading particular information that was provided to us by Gale Associates, the photometric chart of the area under consideration, in the athletic fields. And it was also an order of condition from the Conservation Commission. That kind of brings that to our attention as well. And Tom Houston's response was sort of cut short a little bit, and what he tried to respond to that. The specifics were, I guess, in the orders of conditions on the Conservation Commission was that there'll be no spillage of light into the wetlands area, as indicated on the photometric chart. The blue line being the border or the delineation of the wetlands line. And if you were to look at the softball field and the area around the tennis courts, there are three areas there that are clearly where there is light that is spread beyond the wetlands line. There's the area along the third base side of the softball field that goes up to the property line. There's the area out in right field at the softball field. And then there's an area between the tennis courts and it looks like the shot put facility there at the end of the soccer field. Those readings are shown in black on the photometric chart, and I'm just, again, reading what information we were given by Gale Associates. And they, what they do read is that there are numbers in there, and these are 20-foot square grids that are set up in the photometric chart that are calculated by the engineers who designed this system, the lighting system, Musco, which incidentally is a very good outfit that was chosen to do the lighting on this project. And they can pinpoint their lighting. But these three areas are clearly beyond the wetlands line because the readings vary anywhere from 0.1 to roughly 6, but mostly in the 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4 range, which, as a reference, would be typical for a suburban parking lot requirement from the IES, which is the standard form for designers for lighting levels in particular areas. And so you can't deny that that based on the data that we have received, that it does exceed the line. There's one other area that was not covered by Mr. Houston, and that is the light trespass over the property line on the south side where the football fields is and the grandstand. If you were to look at that drawing, and I don't have it to show on the screen, but if you look on that one, there are two areas that are in violation where, again, the light does cross the property line onto private properties over the road that exists, that access road, off Bay Road to service those buildings, those houses along that area. And then there are two rows of data. So the data, they're roughly a 20-foot strip, the length of the grandstand and the area right behind home plate on the Major League ball field, Major League size ball field. So those are two other violations. So there are in effect 5 areas on the chart that, and I guess that was Ms. Giroux's objection, that that was being dismissed or overlooked as a condition that ought to be represented somehow in our orders of conditions, or that really is our decision. And there are really two here. One is the wetlands lighting. Again, that was under the Conservation Commission. The other one is the light trespass onto private property behind the grandstands, and pretty close to that one residence on that side of the building. So again, I think, that although these numbers, lighting suburban parking lot numbers, 0.2, 0.4, 0.5, foot candles is really low. It's enough to see, it's enough to shine on those areas. So I think there would be a question, what would the board like to do with that information?
So we're talking tenths of a foot candle.
Yes.
Let's just condition the project like we would. I don't see a reason to open the hearing for a minor
Yeah.
detail on a design. These aren't exact modeling.
We
that
can't,
We can
I don't think we need
condition.
to open it because the
Yeah.
information is here. It's just a matter of bringing it to the attention of the board. Does the board want to do anything with
No, I
that
guess
information?
that was
Not
my way.
In terms
not
of
when
the-
you're talking tenths of a foot candle.
I think the answer is, what you're getting from Rick and I is no.
The light that we're looking at on our desk is somewhere around 60 to 70 foot candles per square foot.
Yeah.
A tenth of a foot candle
Correct.
is less than a candle.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's really substantive.
So
Well,
you
that's,
want the vote,
again, that's the
or-
question. If it is, it's either, doesn't cross the wetlands or it does cross it. I mean, that's the
Right.
case. And
Well, with
in
respect,
fact,
I think,
we're not being asked, you're the one who doesn't like to get into technical issues because we're not experts on it, but the fact is it does. And so does the board want to, again, support the orders of conditions from the Conservation
Right.
Commission,
So
which I think
the-
is what we're,
yeah, there are two issues. One is the spillover to other property, which is
Well,
insignificant.
that's the next question I had.
Yeah.
What are we talking about, the levels that are impinging on the other properties?
on the residential property.
Yeah.
Those again start around 0.1 and they go up to 0.7
Oh, God.
So-
foot candles.
No,
A suggestion I have is we've already talked about a condition that would shield the visibility of the point source from abutting neighbors. And that same strategy, which is basically an accessory shield over the luminaire, I would think, solve the same problem and is easy to retrofit, and actually could be done after the fact if it's a problem. In other words, these are engineering calculations that are predicting, and what you can do is you can go out afterwards with a light meter, you can check it. If it's a problem, it can be retrofitted. So I think that's an easy condition to create and an easy problem to solve. I don't think it requires reopening the hearing, and I don't think it requires a lot of discussion.
I agree, but I don't want to tell them how to achieve the condition.
No, we can say
We can,
Yeah.
you have to go to 0, we could tell them that.
yeah,
And,
but I'm just saying there are possibilities. They don't have to reselect luminaires, you don't have to reopen the hearing. There are solutions.
Yeah, yeah.
There are solutions,
Yeah.
that's all.
I've dealt with Nesco before, they've done this hundreds of times, when they're asked to. And there's shields that are erected on there specifically for that luminaire and to prevent light flow in a particular area. So it is a doable thing, and, again, kind of a common,
Well, it's already conditioned by we can't remove a condition that the Conservation Commission has issued, so
no.
I think we just agree that it's conditioned and move forward through the rest of the things we're considering here.
Yeah, but there is the
Big-
one, the light trespass onto the residential property, is one that is not dealt with yet. And that is whether that's a violation. The Conservation Commission chose the wetlands line, I guess, because it's, good practice, not to light up the wetlands area.
Again, I think it would be very easy to, we can reiterate the condition covering the wetlands, and then we can add the condition regarding the abutting properties. Again, it's not that complicated, I think,
It
to
isn't,
just add it in, so.
Yeah, typically what happens, you go to 0 on all property lines, so there is no trespass across there, and that's just the way it's done.
So at the last meeting, we adopted a condition that says, obtain certification under the dark sky approved outdoor lighting program to minimize overall light pollution impacts on abutters, reducing trespassing glare, managing high-angle glare and glow effects, and minimizing luminum densities, thus reducing energy consumption. Do you have language, Jonathan, that you could add to that
Well,
would?
what we discussed was an accessory shield that's added to the luminaire. That's what was discussed.
Necessary to,
If necessary. So all of these things can be done after the fact. If a light source, the actual light source in the luminaire is visible from an abutting property, or if there's light trespass, these shields can be retrofitted to the specified luminaire. And that's the condition.
And we could just then, at the end of that sentence, say, and adding, could you give me the language, adding?
Adding an accessory shield,
If necessary.
if necessary, or similar strategy to achieve the same result. In other words, it doesn't have to be that. They could, if they want to substitute the luminaires, they could do that. Just you're after the performance.
And you do want to put a standard there to achieve a 0-foot candle level at the property line.
Yes, and to achieve no visible light sources from abutting properties.
Well, if we have 0-foot
Yeah.
candle at the
That's
property
different.
line.
It's different to,
No
they
visible,
they have
no
nothing,
trespass.
they have nothing to do with each other. One is actually seeing the diode,
That's in there too, but.
Yes.
But also you want the
and then no visible light trespass, but the shields are serving two functions.
I think you all need to give me the language. I mean,
Okay.
I don't have
Do we need to do it now, or do we want to do it afterwards,
we
or?
can do it afterwards. I mean,
Okay.
if we agree to what you're proposing,
Again, there's
you
two.
can provide the language.
There's two problems you're trying to solve. One is light trespass, and the other is the diode or whatever the light source is being visible from an adjacent property. And they're two separate and independent issues to solve, and they're both solvable in the same way.
we just need to be very careful with the language so that.
Or something else that performs the same thing.
Right, I'm just, so that, some abutter says, well, I can see the light source. Well, their light source might be the glow. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, we'll be careful that it's the actual
Fixture.
luminaire. It's the light source coming out of the
Right.
fixture.
You'll have to provide me with the language. I'm not going to try and extrapolate from what you've said. I can't write that fast.
Okay.
Sorry. So I think that addresses the issue that Ms. Giroux raised, and we also, have duplicated the condition that the Conservation Commission imposed, and that is to have no spillover illumination into the wetlands. Okay. So I think at this point, we can then move on, and I think that we agreed that the
Madam Chair, I just noticed on page 1 of the package that we received, there's very good wording in the second to last or third to last paragraph on
Starting with ensure,
insure, yeah.
right here.
Yes, that we agreed to at the last meeting.
That's part of the wording there.
That was Emil's
Right.
condition, so, right.
That kind of takes care of your first question.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the other one is, the light trespass.
Right.
Yeah, in fact, that next bullet says spillover elimination into wetlands. You could also say, and abutting private properties.
Yep, and then you got it.
Oh, okay,
That's easy.
then we're done.
Yeah. They'll come up with a solution.
So we don't have to do anything else.
When we refer to abutters with regards to negotiating with the applicant, are we referring to the immediate abutters or the abutters that would have been notified within a certain distance? You know, how many people are we talking? Is it,
In this case, it's
How
only
many
the
people
one
check-
impacted. The only one impacted, not all the abutters along the property line. I don't know if that's what you mean.
I just don't
think
know
he-
if like they're gonna have a meeting and then,
Well, there's a definition of
20
abutters, and they're
people.
basically,
Up to the
property
meeting.
owners who have land adjacent to this
well,
project.
I know that when you put a notification out to the abutters, it includes people within a certain distance from the property.
300 feet.
Could be loads of people, I don't know. So I don't know how many people the applicant's gonna have to negotiate to get with is my point.
I think we
Well,
might
the thing
have
is,
a
the
list.
thing is, they produced the chart, so this is sort of where all the numbers.
I'm talking about the timing of the
He's on the next bullet item.
use.
Next bullet.
It was going back to the
Last
use of the
one, page
PA
one.
system and light. I just
Oh.
don't like punting to the butters to deal with this.
Well,
Patrick, would you know how many abutters there were?
I do not.
I think I.
Well,
can find-
abutters are a butter. So I don't think you have to worry about someone, 500 feet beyond, second, third, fourth row. Otherwise, the language of the,
I
would
believe,
have been written to say people within a radius of so much.
I think it's an abutter or an abutter to an abutter within 300 feet. But I think you generally, who do you send out, isn't it within 300 feet?
It
when-
is within
Yeah.
300 feet.
So I have no idea how many people are, if that's just the
So it
abutter.
needn't have a common property line. 300 feet is a definition of an abutter?
No. You notify, they're mutually exclusive in that, abutters are abutters.
Yeah.
They share property lines, whereas property owners may be, in smaller lots within that 300-foot radii, but, they are not obviously an abutter if there are lots in between.
Right.
Well, there are 25.
So which group is
butters.
going to apply to these negotiations? The 300 foot?
Say again?
Which definition is going to apply to these negotiations?
I would make that direct abutters because the impact distances of lighting, those kinds of things aren't going to be more than, say, one lot, I would have to believe.
It's literal abutters.
So
or
direct butters.
direct abutters.
And so we did indicate that we recommended that the school district and the abutters negotiate reasonable light system cutoff times. And I think that might, I don't know if we should limit it to direct abutters or to the 25 or so abutters within the 300 feet.
I'd make it direct abutters.
And I'd accept the proposed times of they did a lot of homework with regards to the standards for hours of operation in comparison to adjacent towns with similar applications to fields and whatnot. I just don't like, I've been an applicant in these negotiations, I don't think anyone has anything bad to do, but these things do not, these aren't easy,
Conversation.
Well, I think what's on the,
goals to achieve.
what's on the table here is to let the folks have that conversation, and if they get stuck, then they come to the planning board, and the planning board will decide.
And I
But
and I would-
allow that conversation to take
Right.
place.
And
That's
there-
all.
Is that a is it a prior to occupancy type of condition,
Well,
or is
there
it
are
a
two-
condition before construction? Because that matters too. Like, this process could go on, and I don't want it to hold up construction.
Well,
So we make it, we have to tail it, we have to tag it to something.
No one's saying they can't use the lights or the sound system, so that will go into effect. It's in terms of the time. And I would just make 2 points, that I don't believe that these athletic facilities have had the type of lighting that's being added. So it isn't as if people moved into these adjacent properties knowing that there was going to be this type of light. That's number one. So it isn't as if, it was existing and they moved there, and then you could say, well, they just assumed that there was going to be this type of light and noise on the property. So that's a little bit different scenario, and it might lead to a bit different conversation. And the other aspect of this is that this school district has been very straightforward and candid that they're intending to make these fields available to the public. And so to the extent that the school district leases out these fields, then it's no longer just an educational use that would be subject to the Dover Amendment. The school district is then operating a bit like a commercial entity. So that does give the direct abutters a little bit of wiggle room, so that on a nice, beautiful weekend in the summer, when they want to have a cocktail party, they might not have, a raucous pickleball game impinging on their peace of mind. So these are the kind of conversations that could be had. And I take the school district at its word that it wants to be a good neighbor. So I think that I would expect that they would have good conversations with the direct abutters, given those
I agree
two.
with Pat that there should be a time frame attached to it, though.
Yeah,
Oh,
each one of these conditions, we
Yeah,
should align
there should-
on whether it's a general condition, a pre-occupancy condition, a condition during construction, or something like that.
I agree.
So what would you suggest?
I
2
would
months,
say
3
it's-
months?
No, I would say this is prior to occupancy. Prior to obtaining occupancy, they would have been able to come to an agreement on the allowable hours of use.
I would agree.
And if not, then we'll intervene.
Agreed.
But it would not hold up them starting construction.
Right.
Got it,
Same with the lighting.
got it. That makes sense.
So what
Whereas
I-
the soil testing condition that was proposed should be possibly something different.
Yeah.
Because the building inspector, he's gonna, obviously they gotta have the permit, I guess, to do the digging, but.
Well, what we'll do is we'll go
not to do the
through,
digging.
we'll go through all these conditions, and then, once we have the actual decision in hand with the conditions intact, we can then, parse through them and pick up any of these inconsistencies. So what this is going to read now is the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District and the direct abutters shall negotiate reasonable light system cutoff times prior to occupancy. And it'll be similar with respect to the operation of the public address system prior to occupancy.
And it should mention that the planning board will intervene if no agreement can be reached.
I have made that note, but I will probably rephrase it to make it direct as opposed to, I think I'd say in the event an agreement cannot be reached at the request of the parties, the planning board will intervene.
And that would be in regard to both the public address system and the
Right.
lighting. Okay.
One or both parties.
And Pat, were you suggesting that was pre-construction?
Pre-occupancy.
Pre-occupancy.
So, well, I guess
Before you
they'll have,
close the
so
building
they'll
permit
have to go
period.
through some testing before occupancy in order for the abutters to understand what the potential impacts are, right?
It wouldn't have to necessarily.
Well, how would they judge whether the light is too much or the noise is too
They,
much?
yeah, they would have
Not
to.
too much or too, I think it's just establishing an hours of operation, isn't it?
Yeah, see, I think
Yep.
the hours.
This has nothing to do with illumination testing, it's strictly hours.
Okay.
Right. Okay, moving on. Private wells. We did begin our discussion of private wells, and so I do have language with respect to that, and it's substantially the same as what appears in the Conservation Commission's order of conditions. But in addition, I have the it's school district, I had a typo in there, but the testing, I have testing of any private wells within so many yards of the athletic fields. But I obtained information from, at Tom Houston's suggestion, from the Board of Health. So he identified the following properties that have wells. So I will, instead of having within so many yards, I can actually identify the properties that may have wells. So there's number 1 Long Meadow Way, and the Board of Health does not have an official record of a private well on the property, but it believes there is one. It may or may not be used for drinking water. Number 3 Long Meadow Way and number 5 Long Meadow Way, as well as 823 Bay Road and the Board of Health suspects there will be a private well at 821 Bay Road, but the school district obviously cannot test a well that doesn't exist yet. So, I will have to be circumspect in how that's delineated. So we now have that information.
So, question, Mark, on the Conservation Commission conditions, did they require private well testing?
No, they didn't, but I think it's, as Bill pointed out, it's really an insurance policy.
Oh, I get that. So my question is, because we talked about this at length at the last meeting, and I think you were of the opinion, and several others were, that it really would be a smart thing to do, so they establish a baseline as a sort of protective against potential future liability. So I think everybody said, yeah, it would be probably a good thing to do. My question, but we couldn't get a straight answer from Gale Associates.
There are 4 wells at issue here. I mean, we're not talking 40 wells, we're talking 4 wells.
I just want to have a,
Right.
so, but now we have the superintendent here, so I'd like to ask that question.
Well, the public hearing is closed. That's an issue.
Okay.
I mean, my opinion is the Conservation Commission has already weighed in, and they're gonna test the groundwater nearest to the area impacted. And whether or not we feel it's a good idea or good insurance, I don't think it's upon us to impose a condition related to testing the wells.
Well, I look at.
That's my opinion.
And I understand that, and under normal circumstances, I would probably agree with you, but I make 2 points here. One is that the application itself raises the issue of PFAS. And if no one wanted us to talk about it, why was it in the application? So it is in the application, and it's a conversation that the town is having as we speak, and it's a conversation that will take place at town meeting. So I think that under those circumstances, and then just the whole entire purpose of our stormwater management bylaw is to protect water resources. We have one well in town that's shut down because of a level of PFAS contamination that's outside the bounds of what is permissible. So I think it's eminently reasonable to require this. And if there's never another problem, that's great. But if there is, then it's something, the problem can be addressed.
And it is something that the peer reviewer suggested.
Absolutely.
So I again raised the question, do we have the authority to require testing of expenditure of public money on testing of private wells? So I'm not opposing this. I just want to make sure we have the authority to do that if that's something the board wants to do. So I would ask Patrick Reffett to get the opinion of town council as to whether we can actually require that to be done.
I think that because that is technically a trespass, it would have to be accommodated through a complete allowance by that property owner in a voluntary basis
Yep.
for that to take place.
Yeah, I was gonna raise that same concern. The mandatory language of shall gives me pause personally.
It should be may.
I would suggest, subject to the express consent of the property owner,
Yeah.
the Hamilton Wenham Regional School District shall conduct testing. That's just me personally. I am concerned about a potential trespass, and I
Right,
don't
no,
think we can enter upon that
it's a-
property.
You have to, you understand, I took, when I drafted these, I didn't have 48 hours to, not being compensated for this. I took Mr. Houston's language and put them out on paper
Sure.
for this discussion.
Right.
So any points that other board members might
That's
wish to
good.
raise, I'm very much open to them, and in fact, I urge everyone to think of all these points, because they're good ones.
Yeah.
And so, whether technically, well, I look at stormwater management, why do we have it? The purpose is protect water resources. If you don't even bother to do that, then the rest of it is kind of like, what are we here for? But
Understood, and I think we've done a really good job on the site that is subject to the stormwater special permit.
right.
Now
well,
we're
it-
going
it's-
outside the parameters of the special permit and saying, well, you also have to do this on private property.
Well, this is the result of these hydrogeological conditions. I mean, once water.
That's a slippery slope.
It's a slippery slope, but I mean, for example, one has an absolute right, I would imagine, to pollute their own property. But when that trespasses onto the property of others, which it might have the potential of doing, then I think that one would have would want to be responsible and ensure that that at the outset, there is no problem with these wells from which people draw their water. And then if after the fact, the property owners elect to continue to test their wells
No,
and
I get it.
find there's a
get it.
problem.
I get it. The other
Or
thing,
not, as the case may be.
I get it. The other thing I would question is the last paragraph where you're requiring annual inspections and order remediation in the event the chemicals listed are above 4 parts per trillion. That's unmeasurable. We do not have the technology to measure 4 parts per trillion.
That's the EPA test. And
No, that's EPA's suggested,
No,
non-regulated,
proposed.
non-lawful and I read it. I went and researched this, so they can't detect it. We don't have the technology they're suggesting that. It's a optional standard that has not been in law. So if you're going to put that kind of level in, then it ought to be the current standard set by the state, which is 20 parts per trillion. You can't regulate to future regulations that may or may not come into effect. You have to pick a standard that exists currently.
That was my point. We're none of us, we can't define testing acceptable criteria on internet searches. I think we have to refer to the Massachusetts State Drinking Water Quality Standard. The most current state of Massachusetts drinking water quality standard set out by the MADB. I think that's.
So if it
that's all you can do.
changes, then.
If it changes by the time they have to test, then it changes, but.
Right.
You set the condition based on a reference to a standard, not defining that standard.
Right.
Yeah, but I think this number came from Tom Houston. He was the one who came up with
Tom Houston's also not a toxicologist, he's a civil
Oh,
engineer.
not
It's,
asking.
and he can make up his own standards. So we can choose to agree or not agree with Tom Houston's
it. And all you can do is
recommendations.
say,
We can refer to a standard that
base it
exists.
to the current best standard, for drinking water.
We can refer to a CMR in the state of
Standard.
Massachusetts.
It's not a standard.
It's a drinking quality
you
water
have to go
standard,
with
it's
the
CMR or something.
It's currently in discussion by the EPA. They have suggested it as a potential, but you read the literature and they said this is not a regulation and it's non-enforceable. And it's non-detectable. So how the hell do you regulate a non-detectable substance? I mean, come on,
That
really?
level. Right.
I think it's
I mean,
310 CMR.
let's be rational about what we're doing rather than wishing something for the future that doesn't yet, we can't yet detect.
It's 310 CMR 22.
So I think that makes the most sense, is attaching it to what the state regulation is.
Until such time it's changed.
Right, and then it'll change because we're not
And
gonna
if
put
it
the,
changes
we don't put the
between the
regulation
time
in
they
here.
start construction, then that's fine, but you can't, we can't be regulating with a pencil and an eraser.
Well, to be candid with you, I think that the regulations will change.
Well, that
Less
may be true, but they haven't yet.
Right.
I think the compromise is to make it whatever regulations are in effect
Correct,
at the time the test is done, state regulations.
right,
I don't suspect they're going to get any looser.
No,
Right.
that was my
So-
point.
correct.
And when the town well was shut down, it was shut down because it violated the 20 limit. I don't know, do you even know what the reading was? Some readings are in the hundreds
Yeah.
in towns. I don't.
I think most people, if they sample their well today, will find out it doesn't meet the drinking quality water standard.
Yeah.
That's my experience.
That doesn't make it right.
No, it absolutely does not. But I mean, if it is the suggestion to test beforehand, I think this is going to be a surprise.
That's why it's valuable.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I think that the issue here is you're going to test using the best tests possible. The way it's phrased is the only difference between 4 and 20 is at what point does the planning board order remediation? Right? It's not that you're going to use whatever test you need, but the way this is phrased, the difference between 4 and 20 is really, if it's 4, then we're going to order remediation if the test is above 4. If it's 20, it's not what the test is. The test is going to test what it tests. And if it's 20, then we'll order remediation when the test comes back above 20. That's what this is saying. So I would say we just go with whatever the state has at the time. But this is not about using a weak test or a strong test. This is about
Testing.
use the best test, and then at what point do you order remediation, 4 or 20? And we'll let the state decide that.
Right.
Science is science, so the test is the test.
So we
Question is, at what point do we take action on the test?
Right. Well, we'll have to amend that last paragraph.
And I'm wondering, just out of curiosity, is the Board of Health charged with enforcing these regulations in terms of, I'm just, it's a question I'm asking. You know, somebody might say, well, the planning board doesn't have the expertise here to do that. That really is under the guise of the Board of Health. And that's just a question here. I'm not pushing back.
I can't answer that question. I mean, I think the DPW, certainly with respect to the drinking water,
Yeah.
you know, has responsibility. But the problem here, I've been thinking about this, is that, you know, there are all sorts of boards and commissions who circle around the drain, no pun intended. And you know, if everybody, you know, goes into their little cave and looks at things myopically, bad things happen. And so if everybody stays exactly in their lane, it opens up avenues for serious problems in the future.
No, I'm not trying to avoid it. That was just a sort of jurisdiction question, whether they.
Yeah, I in the memo that I prepared, I included the statement of the Board of Health, and the Board of Health, of course, does recognize that these forever chemicals are a source of great concern, and information is coming out on a regular basis about their impacts on human health,
No, that's well known, and we're bathing it. We bathe in these things. We
Well,
drink, we
you know,
drink them, we wear them, we eat them.
And this is a problem that I have, is that everyone says that, but what they fail to recognize is that these forever chemicals act synergistically. So by saying they exist already, so a few more PFAS chemicals in our system won't hurt, is a very, very
We have a lot on
weak
our agenda
argument.
tonight. Can we go through the
Yes, let's
conditions
get
now,
through them.
please?
But, so, I mean,
We could talk forever.
Yeah.
let's keep
So
going.
let me just clarify one other thing. I'm trying to think of what remediation we or whoever succeeds us on the planning board is going to order should this act come into.
Actually,
Well,
it's
that's a
almost
very good-
And the
nonsensical.
remediation that would seem obvious is the town is going to be required to hook them up to town water.
Right.
Right. So it's
So-
not an exorbitant amount of money, but
Right. So.
that would be the most obvious remediation.
So I'm thinking if we're gonna do that, then maybe we should state that.
Right, I
rather
just
than-
added it.
Because,
That the homeowner has the option
right.
to have the
because this
town
could become-
install at their expense.
Right, it could be
town water.
endless litigation. Well, I want a treatment plant on my
Right.
property to fix this problem.
No. Well, yeah, I agree. You're right.
Or remove
Well,
the
I think we ought
source.
to be specific about that.
Remove the source? Oh, well, how are we going to remove the source
Reverse
of the
osmosis.
contamination 400 feet under the ground that's seeping in from somewhere else? You're never going to do that. You can't do that. Close the school down. That wouldn't get rid of the PFAS, would it? No. The only remediation is town water.
Okay.
Assuming at that point the town water still passes.
One well's closed, so. All right, so we're good on that. You know, obviously, you know, the edits to this will have to be made, and then everyone will have to, you know, really sign off on the final product. So let's keep going. The operation and maintenance budget is next.
Is there a reason why we're focusing on the budget? Because it is a conscom condition and a state requirement in the handbook to do the long-term operation and maintenance plan. And it outlines the requirements for the people doing that, executing that work. So I feel like this is very redundant with existing requirements as a condition. And it's actually also kind of weird that the conservation, if the planning board is a stormwater authority, it's weird that the Conservation Commission is putting conditions in for stormwater management, but
There's
the
a
fact
lot
is
of-
they already exist, so
Well,
I'm
actually,
wondering why we duplicate them. If the requirement's to do it, why do we make a requirement that there's a budget to do it? And why we outline the requirements for the person doing it when there's already a requirement in a state handbook and in the operation and maintenance plan that says it's got to be done by a certified person?
well, actually, it's the maintenance of this synthetic turf. Because my recollection is, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that Kathleen Hervel said that there really is not much maintenance at all with respect to synthetic turf, that reliance on UV light is sufficient. But my research indicated that's not entirely correct. And so going to a synthetic turf manufacturer, I found that there are recommended maintenance requirements
So can we
for
write-
synthetic turf.
Should we just can we just focus that on the operation and maintenance of the turf
Synthetic
fields?
turf? Sure.
And just establish that there should be one and that it's in the budget?
Well, it says the budget shall include an itemization of the labor and material costs of maintaining synthetic turf that will be exposed to leaf litter, animal waste, and other sources of bacteria and contaminants that may not be resolved by mere exposure to UV. So the Pro Green, which is a synthetic turf manufacturer, I pulled this right off their website, says to ensure a long-lasting turf life, there are some best practices to follow. Regular cleanup, timely removal of leaves, debris, and pet feces is crucial to maintain the integrity and appearance of the turf. Periodic rinsing, so wetting it down and cleaning it that way. Fiber grooming, power brooming the fibers once a year to maintain an upright position, giving your artificial grass a natural and appealing look.
So I don't think we're gonna write the maintenance SOP for them, right? We're gonna,
Infill maintenance.
they should establish a budget.
I have a feeling the school district is not going to allow players on the field to have animal waste and leaves and other detritus floating around. I'm not worried about that. I think the second bullet actually takes care of it. They should be required to demonstrate in its operation and maintenance budget it's allocated sufficient funds to perform regular maintenance and inspection. We should put maintenance and inspection, inspection and maintenance, necessary for the rehabilitation of the proposed stormwater systems, period.
Yep, that's good.
If the kids want to be running around on, crap-infested fields, let them go at it. I'm sure the parents will be really happy about that.
Was
would
that
be
the
a-
second bullet item that you
Yes,
read?
you just read the second bullet.
Yeah, that's the second bullet.
And if we're categorizing it, it'd be a post-occupancy.
I put in there
requirement.
regular inspection and maintenance necessary for, I don't know, it's rehabilitation. I think we need maintaining. You're assuming that it's deteriorated.
Right now,
Well, it does deteriorate it.
Well,
Remember,
you're
it
doing
drops
regular-
600 to 1,000 pounds worth of fine particle, PFAS particles every year get stripped just from use and lay there within the little flaky leaves. And when you wash the fields, that 600 to 1,000 pounds worth of microscopic particles gets washed away into the drainage system.
Right, so maintenance and inspection.
Right. That's one of the reasons they wear out,
No, I
is they
understand.
wear out, literally.
No, I
The little,
understand.
the little leaves lose their resiliency and half of their mass.
And according to the peer reviewer, somewhere between 80 and 90% of the little microscopic particles will reside and fall back into the substrate of the field. So-
Right, and so that when you roll the field up after 10 years, it weighs 600 pounds more than when you put it down, and the difference is all of the particles that I certainly wouldn't want to roll those up without wearing a hazmat suit. But
Okay.
that's just,
We have maintenance budget, and that's a post-occupancy requirement.
post occupancy, yep.
Okay, any other comments on that operations and maintenance budget? We should try and move on. I apologize.
okay, so the next point, shall identify independent testing laboratory and so on. Does the Conservation Commission have a baseline at this point?
No, I don't
All right.
believe so. I mean, I don't.
Is
know
it within our purview, just like the wells, to ask them to create a baseline so that over the future, when they conduct a systematic, yearly or whatever, set of water monitorings out along the edges of the river and so on, that they have a baseline to compare it to?
They will have a baseline because they will, they,
They're going to start sometime this year before
before
construction?
construction begins, I believe.
Oh, okay, that's great, okay.
And so on page 4, I guess we have concluded that, well, at least the state is 20 parts per million. The
Again, I
40
think we should
parts
just,
per million is the proposed drinking water standard from the EPA. And then there are other tests that are available for total chlorine.
I think we should just refer again to the Massachusetts drinking water requirements for 20.
Well,
I
and-
would
and it-
prefer to use, again, since this is not enforcing any regulatory action, 420, whatever, I would prefer to acquire the most accurate comprehensive test at the time available. What you do with the test is another question, but I would, just as a matter of science, want to use
Well,
the,
you use the best
it is a-
test that is established by a regulatory authority, not, because if you use a loosey-goosey language like that, somebody's gonna say, well, 4 parts per trillion is the best.
But I think you keep in mind, Bill, when you get the results from these tests, it's not pass, fail, pass, fail, pass. It's
I know,
quantitative.
it's a number,
quantitative.
it's a number.
So
But I would like to have a test that's capable of getting a smaller number rather than a bigger number.
Well, that's,
Right, less than, we don't know, less than 80, well, that tells me nothing. Less than 20, that tells me something. Less than 4, that tells me something else. So if you pay a few more dollars and you get a test that has the sensitivity level down to 4, I would just assume that we do that. Doesn't require that we
can't.
remediate or do anything.
And you don't have the authority. We can't arbitrarily establish standards that we think we should.
It's
like
not
to
a
have.
standard, it's a test.
It's a standard that a test has to meet.
No. Okay, it has to be capable of detecting down to a
No,
certain
no.
level.
This is a standard. The
okay,
state
here's the
establishes
way
a
it works.
regulatory
You apply
standard.
the existing regulatory standard using the most accurate tests available, because there are different tests.
Well, fine.
That would be
Then how
fine
do
with
you
me.
determine what's the most accurate test?
That would be fine with me.
Well, you choose a reputable
Just meet the
testing
standard.
lab.
You don't need to overwork this. Just meet the standard.
we're gonna eliminate all these words in here are just reference for us, reference information that we had access
They
to,
were,
right?
they
There
were
wasn't,
information.
okay.
You know, this,
And the next bullet is.
we're going in the wrong direction on this. This is, you can't establish, if you're gonna start talking about the latest standard, well, what standard are you talking about? I mean, you know, you really have to establish what,
The one the state provide, you can't, the labs to create these tests have to be accredited. They have to be assay developed that gets approved by some regulatory authority. And you can't, for it to be
which is why Tom Houston came up with these.
Tom Houston isn't,
He didn't come up with these. He's not a regulatory authority.
he's not a water quality
He's the
standard
one who came
expert.
up with
He
these,
picked this out of latest, this was an advisory by the EPA. If you read the EPA language, it specifically says this is an advisory, it is not a regulatory legal requirement. Why are we having this argument? We have this argument every time we have a discussion about stormwater or zoning. People want to move the line. I get it. We are not empowered to establish our own standards. The state and the federal government has the standards. That's how we regulate. We don't go like, well, in Hamilton, we're gonna create a whole new standard, because if we do, we're gonna get sued.
No, it's not a whole new standard. This is
It is a-
information.
It's not a
This-
standard,
be
damn
quiet.
it.
Information.
Be quiet.
It's information.
Yeah,
It's
If you
information.
pay for
This came from the peer reviewer.
Oh, my God, well, let's bow down.
Okay,
Rick.
you can take that position. We're not going to listen to anything that man says. You can take that position if you want.
All right, so what is your point?
The point is that we were advised to use these, and we either agree with it or we don't. And
Well, obviously, two of us don't.
Well, the challenge is you're gonna have an accredited lab that doesn't have a certified test to meet the standard.
Right.
That's the problem. So the accredited lab, you can go to MIT and you can get the best, but it's not an accredited test. It's not on instrumentation that gets calibrated to a standard to achieve these results. They're gonna be something you can't, you know, it's not an accredited test. There's no system, probably, there may be. I'm assuming here that the testing lab we use, for instance, is only accredited to do the standards that are allowed by the state.
Yeah.
So they get certified by that third party to,
Yeah.
to get the results that we pay for, but it's, you can't
to me, it's the same
you
thing.
can't get a
listening-
third-party test
so
certified
Listening
get
to
the
an
test.
expert on, say, structures,
Yeah.
and he comes up and he says, your design strength is this for this particular type of material. This is the maximum span, this is whatever, the loads that you can put on it. Those are numbers, those are standards based on, what you're trying to achieve, the level you're trying to achieve. either
You're talking about
safety-
design and modeling here. This is
So what you're saying is, let's rub out all the, maybe the design load is 300 pounds a square foot. Let's wipe out all the numbers,
No.
because all we're gonna do is
No,
say
'cause you can
whatever the
test-
state says, we're gonna go with the
No, because the
state.
design requirements you're talking about, there are accredited tests, certified tests you can do.
We don't have a test, if we
Qualify
put
that.
a standard
Qualify.
in.
You don't have a test here.
Right.
Yeah,
That's the difference.
yeah. Well, I think there are tests to do this, but, that's,
The EPA says there are not tests. I don't know why we're stuck on this. This is like, this is really quite simple.
I will put in language, and we will see if we can agree to it, and we can vote up or down. And in the meantime, if someone is interested in doing their own research as to what testing is available, that can happen. But we did get information about total fluorine analysis and also top assays. So, and there are laboratories that can do those types of tests. So we can do our own research, but I will put in language that basically requires the use of the most current applicable state or federal
you
regulation.
got two test numbers here from the EPA.
Well, and the other thing is the paragraph where it says that the installation has to be certified as PFA-free. So, and they're gonna use current measurement standards. So, we're kind of like going around in circles here, establishing an arbitrary standard. Well, we
Where are
know
you
that
re-
there are 3 manufacturers of
Down on
turf
page
fields that can certify using current technology and standards that are PFA-free.
Yeah, we can't be writing a specification
here-
for the field.
No.
I think we can condition that they use the best available technology to minimize the greatest extent possible language, but we can't write a spec for a system we don't know how it's designed, manufactured.
Well, I think that going to page 5, I think that's reasonable, and essentially, what the language is consistent with that of the Conservation Commission, which consistency is certainly something that should be a goal here. We don't want to be at odds with the Conservation Commission, so,
Well, I think we run the risk of being at odds if we rewrite it. I think if we are happy with the Conservation Commission order conditions, there's no reason to restate them. Because they're already an order of condition, so,
it's called belt and suspenders. Never a bad idea.
but it is a bad idea if there's language, unless if we're copying verbatim the language in the Conservation Commission orders of condition, there is a reason why not to, for the exact purpose that you mentioned.
I did duplicate their information.
And you didn't add anything.
No. I cut and pasted. So their language was, and I think this is what you're getting at, Rick, testing will be for the most up-to-date list of PFAS and Gen X chemicals from both agencies, will form the basis for compliance with all conditions. And I will double-check that that language is identical to the Conservation Commission. So let's move forward.
Are we on page 6?
Page 6.
I don't know what to think about the amounts of money here, and I was also trying to
Well,
think.
we're skipping over some things. So we talked about a wetland scientist and posting the
Okay,
reports of
sorry.
the independent
Sorry.
testing labs. What do we think about those?
I think it's not our purview to put requirements that verify the orders and conditions on the Conservation Commission have been met. I think that's their requirement, not ours. Conservation has requirements, Conservation Commission has requirements. We shouldn't impose conditions
Conditioning.
that require the applicant to meet those conditions. This is us outlining how to verify to the Conservation Commission that the applicant has met their orders and conditions.
Well, we're
those.
duplicating those conditions, so we want,
Well, this is different from what they've, right? I'm talking about the engage a wetland scientist to do all this
well, the
testing.
Conservation Commission didn't have this in there, but
Right.
I don't know why we can't, because we're requiring similar testing.
Well, I guess what I was saying was, I don't think it's our purview to tell the applicant how to meet the Conservation Commission's conditions.
Well, let me just give you a hypothetical. What if they're not meeting the conditions?
Then it's the Conservation Commission's enforcement. It's not ours. We can't, because then, of course, now we tell them how to do it, and what if it happens that,
Yeah, we can't tell them how to run their business. I'm not sure.
I don't agree
that's-
with this point at all.
Sure, that's right.
And the testing that they get is going to be, communicated to the Conservation Commission. It's the Conservation Commission's,
That's
it's their responsibility to then post it or make it available or tell the Board of Health or, like they're doing on Bridge Street now with the state and everything else. So I think we're imposing on their authority here.
Well, maybe they will adopt this. It's my understanding there's a Conservation Commission meeting that's going to take place
That would
maybe
be,
tomorrow.
Yeah,
that
tomorrow
would be
night.
good.
They may actually be interested in that language then.
And as far as escrow funds, the stormwater bylaw and the recently updated rules and regs require a performance guarantee on the stormwater system, and I think we should rely on that language and that existing standard criteria rather than trying to create one specific for this project in the escrow funds section of these conditions. I think we just refer to the stormwater bylaw and the performance guarantee as it's outlined. That's actually one part that wasn't amended during the rules and regs, so even if it's approved with this condition, the rules and regs don't change that language. It's essentially putting a performance guarantee on the system for the cost of the system.
Okay, so that takes care of the first escrow account. Now, the second one, and this is what concerns me a lot, because the life expectancy of the synthetic turf is 8 to 10 years. And so to me, it's just like a roof on your house. It may last 25 or 30 years, and part of your routine maintenance is replacing your roof. So when this synthetic turf, when its useful life is over, what happens to it and who pays for it? In my view, it's part of the maintenance of these athletic fields to take care of what is proposed to be put there and replace it with something else.
Well, it's like, it's kind of redundant language, because you're asking them to establish an escrow fund for the unexpected costs of materials and labor for maintaining the synthetic turf.
That we addressed. That's the performance guarantee
Yeah.
that Pat just,
And the second bullet, again, it's a little bit strange to outline how they this is under the operation and maintenance of the system. It's the requirement of the
well, but the reason that's in here
applicant.
is because this is a very expensive proposition. Because when the synthetic turf has to be removed, there are real problems with where to take it. I mean, right now, there are no entities that recycle synthetic turf, and it would have to be taken, dug up and transported to a landfill, and landfills charge money to
Actually, it
take
would go
synthetic
to,
turf.
go to a mass burn facility.
Can't go to a landfill. There's a state requirement. You can't, any waste.
can't burn that.
Can't go to. But in any case,
So it
it's
doesn't,
Number 4 and
They're not
5 are
conditioned,
due.
it has to happen. There's an operation and maintenance plan of a system. Conditioning it is something I'm struggling with.
well, the thing of it is, if the
It's part of the
opera-
operation and maintenance that
Well,
required
but-
already a budget to set aside.
Right, but we've
Part of
been
the same
given
thing.
a budget for a year and a half. And so in 8 years, if disposal costs north of $500,000, where is this money going to come from?
We already conditioned a 10-year requirement for outlining a budget for the operation and maintenance of the system. And I think that is sufficient.
Right, and plus it says perform as represented under warranties from the manufacturer. Well, if you're representing the warranties under the manufacturer, then the manufacturer is responsible for it under a warranty. I don't think this is necessary in it.
No, there's a difference between warranting the product for your lifetime of 10 years and disposing of it. I agree that 4 and 5 are sort of very vague about, removal of soils contaminated by PFAS. We don't know what standards they're, I mean, that's a real thing. But requiring that each time the synthetic turf is installed, that the installer, basically pay to remove it at the end of its lifetime. And that shifts the risk that removing and disposing of this stuff is going to become increasingly hard. And it shifts that risk off on the installer and off of the back of the town. He's going to build it into the price that he charges for the contract. Oh, if now you want me to go ahead and get rid of this stuff, then I'm going to have to charge you an extra $1 million or $500,000 for that insurance.
Bill, there's a problem with that. One is the installer isn't going to undertake that responsibility. It would have to be the manufacturer. And the problem with this is the 8-year window, because the manufacturer in existence today,
The manufacturer doesn't even have the equipment to, that's different.
they could be out of business. So
This isn't a failure problem. It's not part of a warranty. It's just, this stuff wears out after 10 years, and you have to replace it.
But most likely, the manufacturer nor the installer will be doing the maintenance, so it's.
no, and they're not
I
going
think
to
we
take it
can-
back.
He isn't going to preserve it that much longer.
I think we hit the requirement by outlining a
Operation.
condition to develop an operation and maintenance budget that's outlined per the recommendations by the manufacturer and the installer for the period of 10 years.
Right, but
Let's
that
just keep it
doesn't
there.
address.
It doesn't address the disposal
significant
cost.
expense associated with disposal.
But we can't address it either, because we don't know what it's gonna be like, and neither does the installer, and neither does the
Well,
town. So we have a 10-year operation and maintenance window, and then it gets
Here's
readdressed in
what-
10 years from
here's-
now.
Here's what I'm getting at, Pat.
Yeah.
In 8 to 10 years, when this is obviously a problem, that the school district comes to the taxpayers in Hamilton and says, we need $1 million to get rid of this stuff. So you want to make sure that this routine maintenance, they're providing for the end of life in their operations and maintenance budget.
Yep.
And, you know, to actually take care of the synthetic turf on an annual basis is probably not going to be that much money. I have
I'm
no idea
happy,
what it
I'm
could-
happy,
But it will pale in significance to what it costs to actually remove this and dispose of it in a safe manner.
I'm happy to see 1 to 3 rolled up into
Yeah.
the maintenance budget, or the maintenance, you know, the first account, all right, which is operation, maintenance, and replacement, or so operation, maintenance, and removal.
But it's like anything, it's, based on how well it's maintained and operated over 10 years, how much use it gets and everything else, it could be disposed of in 8 years and 20 years. It's, who knows? And who knows what the cost will be at that point in time? And what kind of technologies will be available to treat it? It's a hard thing to condition.
Even if the town, even if the state were to ban it,
Yeah,
so we couldn't replace it,
yeah,
Right,
we'd still have the problem of removing it.
right.
definitely.
And the town will have to bear that cost.
Yeah.
And they'll have to bear the cost of whatever the replacement is. I mean, I think
And
this
this
is-
would have been a great conversation in the town when they were talking about approving the budget to get the, but I think for a condition
Right.
on a site plan review, it's a bit bit of a stretch. I think we captured it in the operation and maintenance 10-year plan.
I think it's a concern, and I'm hoping that the school committee will consider it, but I agree, I feel like we're like out
It's a
of,
site plan review, stormwater,
out of,
I mean, the way this will work is it won't become a problem until it becomes a problem, and then they're gonna go, oh damn, we're gonna have to replace this, and it's gonna cost us whatever that number is, and then they'll bring that to the voters of the town and say, just like they did for a new turf field, we have to replace it, and
That's
it's
right.
gonna cost X. And if you want good turf fields, that's what it's gonna cost. So,
Well, they won't, I think that the likelihood that they will get a new turf field is virtually
I mean, we
zero.
don't have these conversations when people want to build their homes with new materials that contain PFAS that are, these plastic siding systems and everything. This is a unique, we're imposing, I think, unique requirements.
Well, it's just that the scale of this is so huge,
in an ideal world, the school system, like any business, would say, we're gonna start putting into our capital plan over 10 years, the estimated cost of replacing the system, and you would budget into it. But the school system probably is not gonna do that because they have other priorities and a limited budget. So what happens typically in the public sector is when it becomes a problem, then it becomes a problem, and we're asked as voters to deal with it.
like, I like the idea, because this is what I would do in my own house of planning, but I don't think we have the authority.
I think we captured it in the other requirement for establishing a 10-year
And
budget.
what's the number that you put in there?
Right.
You don't know, because
Yeah.
It was
what's inflation
subject
going to be 10 years from now? I don't
Well,
know.
I mean, are you happy with your taxes now?
Yeah, I would pay more, actually. I would pay more to have better schools. Enrollment at the elementary schools is decreasing, and enrollment at the high school is stagnant.
Right.
So yes, I would be happy to pay more for my taxes for these kids.
Stand up at town meeting, I want to hear that.
Yeah, I just said it.
I mean, either way, if we have, even if you did condition this, it's gonna increase your taxes, so it's,
Right, we're going to pay for it one way or another.
It's
Do you want to
already
pay
in
for it
the-
now, or do you want to pay for it later?
Decision has been made. The town said they would like to pay more property tax to have these fields already. Both towns.
no, what I'm saying, though, it would cost more if we condition this, but we're gonna have to pay it either way.
Either way. But I think we captured it again in the 10-year operating and maintenance budget. Because that's all we can control right now.
Marty, what's gonna be the procedure when this gets drafted up?
I'll have to make a stab at reducing what we've discussed.
You're gonna vote on each one of these independently,
I don't know that that's
or as a
necessarily,
body?
I mean, I don't think we got consensus on these escrow accounts, although I think it would be wise if one were created. I think that, well, the capital budget, whatever way the school district wants to anticipate the removal of this turf after its useful life, I really don't think that they will be able to replace the synthetic turf with synthetic turf, given the bills before the legislature. So I would hope that the school committee and the school district planned on addressing this significant cost in 8 years, as opposed to just throwing up their hands and going to the taxpayer and saying, woe is us, you know, we have to get rid of this stuff now because we can't replace it. And I just think that that's a bit of a
Madam Chair, might I suggest, since we have 3 meetings in a row in 3 weeks, that we change the meeting scheduled for the 2nd to the 9th? That even spreads things out more. Also, maybe we'll learn something from the town meeting that would inform us in writing the regulations.
Well, I think that's a good idea, because although we've discussed all these, I think we've come to some type of consensus. I do think that they have to be reduced to a writing so that everyone can review these and make whatever further comments or revisions. And I think that by moving the April 2nd meeting to April 9th, this will enable a decision to be drafted with these conditions affixed to it, and we will have a full document to consider on April 9th.
That also spaces the meetings out. We have 3 meetings in a row, and then we have 3 or 4 weeks until the end of April.
Right, that makes perfect sense.
Like-
So what we have here, you know, we have our conditions. I will draft them. They will not be as long as what I have in my hand, obviously. And I will transmit them to Patrick, and I'm assuming that Patrick will take the laboring oar in drafting a document for the site plan review and also the stormwater management. And if that could be transmitted to the planning board well in advance of the April 9th meeting, then theoretically we should be able to vote, and our
voted
decision
April
would be
9th.
just subject to minor revisions. So if the decision and the conditions are transmitted at least several days in advance of the April 9th meeting, we should be able to finalize it on that date. And we will be informed with what happens at town meeting. Does that sound?
Like me to make a motion to that effect?
One
I
comment.
can't stop
prior- As an applicant, we would often get a copy of the draft conditions to have an opportunity to provide if there's any kind of clarifying edits.
Oh, no, that's exactly right.
as
So
soon
what
as
I'm
possible.
that's just what I said.
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
So by moving the meeting to April 9th, if I can get these conditions to Patrick in a couple of days, and then Patrick has sufficient time to put a decision together on the actual findings needed for the site plan review and the stormwater management. So if he gets a final document to us, you know, by April 3rd or 4th, I don't have a calendar in front of me, but within at least 3 or 4 days prior to April 9th, then we can go through it, and if there are minor edits or anything like that, we can actually vote subject to whatever changes we agree on.
I guess
at that
my
date.
suggestion was to also communicate the draft to the applicant to get any input or clarifying elements from Gail. As an applicant, you're often given that opportunity prior to a final decision to either, you know, add or, you know, clarify some of the points that are in there to make it easier to apply the requirements to the project. I think that might be a consideration to have.
Well, I don't know that that's ever happened in Hamilton. It might happen in Ipswich, but that would essentially be reopening the public hearing, and I don't quite understand that procedure.
I'm I'm not sure it technically is.
I've never encountered that.
Yeah.
Patrick, can you weigh in on that?
Our consultant? Send it to him?
I've seen it before the closing of the hearing, but not after.
Okay. And I know Ms. Herval had her hand up at various points during the discussion.
Oh.
I didn't know if you wanted to address it in communicating it was a closed
Oh.
hearing, or I don't know why she
Yeah,
had her hand up.
yeah, the public hearing is closed, so if she has anything earth-shattering, she should communicate it with Patrick. And again, if it's something we need to address, we can, on April 9th, consider reopening the public hearing. But, I mean, it's a slippery slope, because if we reopen it for one person, then obviously, you know, there's a need for the public to be able to weigh in. So, any other comments?
All right, I make my motion.
So,
Move the meeting from the 2nd to the 9th of April.
well, they're two different, actually, the first motion is whether we will reschedule the April 2nd meeting to April 9th, motion one. And motion two is to continue the hearing on these athletic field projects to
The
April 9th.
deliberations, yeah.
So I'll entertain the
can-
first motion to continue the,
Can we make a commitment on the next meeting that we're done with the conditions?
oh,
We're gonna vote
Rick,
on it.
the conditions are going to go to Patrick, you know.
No, at next meeting, we will have had 3 weeks to review them. We can make our own comments, so when we get together on the 9th, we agree on the final conditions.
Absolutely.
That's what- yeah,
But I
that's
think
fine.
we have a consensus on these, so I'm going to attempt to draft language that captures what everyone has said. And
Okay.
I've heard every one of you, and I have the benefit of YouTube in the event I am unclear on anything. So I will attempt to incorporate all those comments so that whatever suggestions anyone might have, I hope they're minor. And then Patrick will have the actual decision. And so barring any unforeseen circumstances, it should be, any amendments I'm hoping are very minor.
Good, so we can close the book on it.
And Patrick is going to get the whole package to us in advance, so that if everyone reads it, they will have all their comments
Right.
itemized, any typos, all that, so we can finalize the document
Got it.
in short order.
Excellent.
So first motion to continue the April 2nd hearing to April 9th.
Making the motion or asking for a second? So,
Were you asking for a motion?
Yes, I was asking a motion.
I make the motion that we move the April 2nd meeting to April 9th.
second,
Okay, Pat Norton,
Aye.
Jonathan Poor,
Jonathan Poor, aye.
Bill Wheaton,
Bill Wheaton, aye.
Emil Dahlquist,
Emil Dahlquist, aye.
Beth Herr,
Aye.
Rick Mitchell,
Aye.
Marnie Crouch, aye. And the next motion is to continue the hearing on
The
the
deliberations.
the deliberations to April 9th.
I make a motion to continue the deliberations to April 9th.
Second,
Pat Norton,
Aye.
Jonathan Poor,
Jonathan Poor, aye.
Bill Wheaton,
Bill Wheaton, aye.
Emil
Emil
Dahlquist,
Dahlquist, aye.
Beth Herr,
Aye.
Rick Mitchell,
Aye.
and Marnie Crouch, aye. So we have a plan, and I think that it should be workable. So the next item on our agenda is a discussion of the master plan and the RFQ for the downtown comprehensive plan. So the status of the master plan. The master plan steering committee has, I believe, one more meeting to go over the master plan, and at that point, it should be in its final form with all appendices, and I'm hoping it will have the final formatting and pictures as well.
I hope.
Have you talked to Sarah at all? Is she on?
She's working.
She's working on it. So we haven't, I'm sorry, my recollection is unclear. Did we scheduled a hearing for the next hearing for the Master Plan Steering Committee
That meeting's to be on the 20th
of April?
of April.
That was my recollection, boy, but I thought that can't be. It's so late in the day. So April 20th, so,
Is that to bless it?
pardon me?
Is that to bless it?
Well, I think we need more than one hearing to bless it. I mean, it's a long document. But yes, the planning board has to bless it, and so
Coming with incense and candles and,
I wouldn't think that that would be the, can't say that that would be what's going to happen. It's probably going to be a big sigh of relief from the committee. But, yeah, we'll get a hold of it and take a look at it, and the real meat of the master plan is in the implementation section, and that's a couple of pages, so that's where we are there.
and you thought you were having fun now, just wait till you get that implementation.
Well, I have to say, that doesn't cause me stress. There are other things that cause stress. That doesn't. So, I think did we have a nice packet? Patrick, packet. Now I don't know what I did with it.
And you're thinking, do you consider relocating the train station?
No, we can't control that.
There we go. So, who wants to talk about the
I'm not sure it solved anything.
downtown plan? Just a brief update.
I think Abel can do that since he attended the bidders meeting.
Yeah, thank you. I'll do that. There was an introduction meeting that was offered on the 18th of March here, and it was highly requested that all respondents to the RFQ come here in attendance, show up in person. It was not a Zoom meeting. And there were 4 here, and I think there were a total of 17, Patrick, something like that?
Yeah, 17.
Firms or people who have picked up the packet of information.
Right.
Which is the RF.
17?
Correct.
17, yeah.
Wow, that's great.
We'll see how many respond.
Yeah.
But this was the document that went out, the RFQ. And the next event, I'll just give you a brief rundown what the sequencing is. The next event is to discontinue, well, it's the 21st, to discontinue questions from the applicants. As far as I know, there were no questions.
Right, there were not.
I say applicants, I mean the respondents to that. And then the next timeline is the submittals are due on the 4th of April. And that's the day, and any that come in after that will not be qualified to be
That's
considered.
correct.
And then the review of the RFQ will be April 8 and 9, 2 days, which may include interviews with maybe the top couple, depending on how many we get. And as far as I know, Rick will be there, I believe, right? Rick, on the reviewing the.
Yes.
I haven't heard, but I plan to attend, and then Joe and
Right.
Tim Olson, I guess, will be.
Maybe even Patrick.
Patrick will be there. So,
Amount of time to review 17 applicants.
Well,
The thing about it is that we have a broad applicant pool or interested party pool.
Yeah.
But what's typical with the breadth of the scope that we have here, like say for instance in Littleton, they had Util, they had Brovitz, and they had another company that did the graphics and the mapping. So I know that, you know, one of the firms that was here represented from a person, I think she's from Pittsfield or somewhere out in the western part of the
my
state.
God.
They do landscape architectural design kinds of things. So although there were 17, it's gonna take some teamwork to make for a solid proposal out of a lot of companies.
Yeah, and also a lot of these teams will use the same other disciplines as part of their team. That's not uncommon, that
Right.
a couple of landscape architects might be part of the team, and they're actually contributing a number to several candidates who have their names in to win the project. But my guess is there'll be a winnowing down of a large, if we do get 17, that's great.
Oh, God, I don't think you will.
I don't think we will.
If we get 2 or 3, I'll be pleased.
Yeah, it's a complicated thing, so I would not be surprised if it came down to that. And then it'd be interviews, but probably not interview more than 3, I would imagine, whatever the number is.
It depends on the strength of the proposals and the qualifications and the prior work that they've, you know, provided communities
Yeah.
that are comparable to
Yeah.
what you're seeking, which
Yeah,
we're Smallburg.
yeah. Along those lines, the planning board, you know, except for me, has not had any kind of input in terms of what kind of candidates we're looking for. And I don't know at some point, whether it's the next meeting, if you want to spend any time doing that, well, a meeting on the 9th, to talk about what is it that the planning board feels might be the types of qualifications that would be best suited, you know, for, we have qualifications that are part of the RFQ, but they're for, what's your experience? Have you done 6 of these before, you know, to rate them in a particular format as very advantageous down to very advantageous. So it's a rating system that's been set up, which I guess is standard format in Massachusetts, and so you have a evaluation criteria sentence, and then you have to rate, use a rating system on that.
I would support that discussion with the board.
Yeah, I thought it would be, because I mentioned to the committee that maybe if we prepared some kind of document that we could use going into, before the discussions, to see if we can develop some kind of consensus about what are the best qualifications. I mean, that it's,
Could be something as simple as 5 bullet items. It could be a very
Yeah.
simple document.
yeah. Just, that would be good for me, because I'm a spokesperson for the planning board at that point, and, you know, knowing what this board would support, or what the preferences are here would be useful anyway.
Right, right.
Is the presumption, this is an approved project then to go, there's no like milestone budget approval process for the project, it looks like here?
Yes, it's going to town meeting. There's a warrant article to appropriate $150,000.
Okay.
That's a deadline conclusion, but you saying during the course of the
Well,
preparation?
the town meeting is the, what day?
Seventh.
Sixth.
6th.
In 2025.
6th of,
April.
April 25, though.
Oh, that's the approval of it.
That's the approval of the form-based code, isn't that what you?
no, I'm talking
The
about
town meeting
approval
is
for the
April
project.
April 6th.
To start
It's the
this
funding.
project.
It's
Well,
the
maybe,
funding.
Rick,
I'm just thinking that,
the money's been authorized for the project, right, to do the.
No, it's going to town meeting.
yeah.
It's a warrant article.
I think we
Right,
should
but the-
identify it on here, maybe.
We haven't gotten,
I don't know if the applicants know it, or identify that as a milestone to,
Okay,
if they know they're bidding on something that's not approved in town for.
that I didn't realize, actually. So,
Um,
So, and also, we need to determine who's going to speak in support of the form-based code warrant article.
And if you said the bids are due on the 4th, so you'd have some indication on the 4th whether or not 150, this is a year-long project with a lot of consultants. That's not gonna be enough. No way.
What?
$150,000? No way. Like, really, for this duration and this amount of work?
Yeah. Well,
That would be enough to cover the landscape architect in my experience. Those guys cost, but.
Well, I think that'll be interesting to see during the RFQ process. They may come back and say, well, based on the scope, you know,
Yeah.
you
700
propose,
here
you're
and
really
another
looking at a
700
budget
down
of
there.
X, Y, and Z, or you're gonna
How
have to
can we
reduce
plan
the
this
scope.
out
Yeah.
without
You know, the budget meets the
thinking
scope
about
or the scope
that
meets the
doesn't
budget,
make
you know, so. or the-
so they have a not to exceed, and what we're asking them also is, what will their approach be?
That's only
Did anybody bring up?
increasing the
need
size of the
budget?
towns by.
No.
Yes, we did mention that, you know, the budget for the project's 150K. It's also in the
RFQ.
proposal.
Yeah,
Anybody say anything?
No,
no.
no,
Nobody said anything about the timeline either, which I thought they would.
right. As is
Most of the-
typically the case in the consultant world, you get plain in the game.
Yeah.
And you illustrate good faith, and people understand that, and I'll be perfectly candid here, the element that takes the most amount of time and hand-holding is public input, public comment, and managing it. So, you know, when you get in that process, you understand that, you know, sometimes you have to go back to the well.
Yeah.
The topic that raised the most questions was the 3A project, you know, wanting to know what the town has committed to.
How are we going to make a plan for our downtown if in fact Wenham, to meet its 3A, is going to have to create a downtown right next to it,
In theory.
in theory, right?
Coordination, cooperation.
You sound like you work for the state.
My biggest concern is with the December 31st, 2024 deadline for full compliance with the, with Section 3A. And I've looked at the Attorney General's complaint against the town of Milton. And although Martha Healy has made some noise about being cooperative with towns, I'm not entirely convinced that will be the case. So I'm really concerned about that deadline and whether it's advisable for the town to officially seek a waiver of the full compliance deadline. I am nervous about assuming that the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities will pat us on the head because we've engaged a consultant to do a form-based code in the context of 3A. So that is my biggest concern, and I know that you attached some information from Bowler. We haven't seen its full report. I don't know if it's been transmitted to the
Well, the good,
EHOLC yet.
the good thing is that the judge, Supreme Court judge, I think that's who's gonna hear it,
SJC,
Yep.
yep, in October.
is October. They're gonna hear the case in October, so they won't decide it for a couple of months, so we'll be well into it. But I think you're right, we should, if this gets approved at town meeting, is then figure out a plan using our state senator and representative to get a meeting with the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, and demonstrate that we have, you know, and we can tag
thinking
along
about
our
it.
consultant and say, listen, we're doing this, we are not resisting it, but if we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it so that it succeeds when we take it to town meeting in April. And
2025. I think that's absolutely necessary because this strategy is one that I know the town manager is promulgating. I know the planning board fully supports the form-based code, but I think compliance with Section 3A is a separate problem, and others would say opportunity. But the consultants are being asked to, I'm not sure precisely what they're being asked, obviously to do the form-based code, but the drafting of an actual 3A overlay district, or district as the case may be,
Yeah.
Does require some work. Now, I don't know that if Bowler has a template for a 3A district, I don't think it would be hugely difficult, but then I might be being naive. And so, the questions I have with respect to all of this are dimensional. I mean, all of a sudden, are we going to see 4-story buildings in our downtown?
Right.
And
Well, it's interesting, so Halyard in Gloucester, I think most of us are familiar with that development, that's only 200 units. And we're talking 731. So do you know where I'm talking about at Market Basket?
Oh, yeah,
So that's
yeah.
only a 200-unit facility.
No, I don't think that as a practical matter, there's room in Hamilton for 731 units unless the entire residential area
Can we
surrounding
withdraw from the
downtown
MBTA?
was-
Can you tear up the railroad tracks?
Can we?
No,
We just say,
we're
don't
thinking of
don't stop here.
No, we
Don't stop here.
contemplated that, and
Well, right now, the way.
We'll stop paying our assessment. The 25 people that take the train will have to find other ways of getting, I mean, think of what that's gonna cost us per train ride.
just a seed.
Yeah.
I look at it this way, this whole process is a runway. We build momentum, we start the discussion, we engage a professional consultant to help guide the discussion, hopefully in a constructive fashion, and engage the public so that they're aware of what's coming, the ramifications of what's coming, and the defensive mechanisms that we're taking to prevent sort of the overrun of the downtown in an unseemly fashion. And you're right, it might be we get to April and there's no consensus on 3A, but it's started a process and maybe it moves to fall town meeting. I don't know, but I know that we need to start somewhere and we need to have a guided, thoughtful, careful, public discussion and participation process to make sure that people are aware, educated, and share their opinions and guide the process the best way we can. And if it turns to, crap, then it does. But, otherwise we sit here with our head in the sand and wait until, we get rolled over by the Attorney General.
of course, well, I'll just make 2 points. One is that I really do think that we need to address this 3A issue head-on by reaching out to the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. And then I think we need to recognize that the planning board is not entirely in the driver's seat here. While we support the form-based code, we have not, received any,
Marching orders.
well, any formal information about what Bowler has done and real information as to whether the select board is on board with this approach or anything like that. So, worst case scenario, I don't, I want to protect the planning board from any potential fallout
Good luck.
from this. Well, yeah.
Just
yeah.
real quick, the senator and representative are meeting with the town manager and myself, I think, select board member possibly on April the 1st, to begin that dialogue, to make sure they understand that we need them to represent our interest, to make them understand that there's some timing implications. We fully understand that we could race out and try to get a 3A overlay district before the public that more than likely would not be approved. We have chosen to do it with the benefit of form-based zoning, which that's going to be, as you understand and you basically say, it's a complicating factor, but it is the factor that we're convinced is going to allow people to understand what downtown can
Will
look like.
Absolutely.
And
I-
that's exactly the approach that we will advise the state that we're undertaking through.
So are you meeting with Kristen Kastner and who else?
Yeah, Bruce Tarr.
Bruce Tarr.
Yeah, and the 800-pound gorilla here is the Winthrop School site.
Right, I mean, even with that, we can't do 731 units, but without it,
No, but as soon as
I
it be-
think that we need to pull back from the notion that we're gonna have to accommodate 730 units.
No, it won't.
Because
It's-
we don't have land area
To do.
or land infrastructural ability to
do.
accommodate that. It's going to be a very rare project that has the ability to meet that level of density, and prior to that, lock up enough land area to make it worthwhile and to make it scalable to create the kind of development that even comes close to 3A density,
Which is a
Right.
guideline too, right?
which
It's
is a guideline.
Which is not
Which
enforceable.
is-
And,
Right.
you know, the operative part here that I keep saying to people is that the developers have to spend the money on creating the infrastructure. It's not the towns. And part of that is getting enough land area, which our
Makes it
parcels over here are minuscule except for the school. They're going to have a very, I'd say, an impossible time to get enough land area to make a development reasonable in which fits a size of site that they can acquire. There may be two on Willow Street on the northerly end if someone has the ability to get both of those, but I think it's really doubtful that we'd ever see any of it occur other than upon the Winthrop School site, which, yeah, if we've got our form-based zoning in place, we know exactly what's gonna happen.
well,
So anyway, we do need to decide from, I'm envisioning that a member of the planning board and a member of the Hamilton Development Corporation will get up on the floor and make some sort of, short presentation of what does this entail, what does it mean, why are we doing this?
right, and so,
We need to pick that person from the planning board.
I think that person's obvious, but where'd Patrick disappear to?
He ran.
I really think it would be useful if at town meeting on the 6th, that not only could there be a report that the town has met with our state representatives, but they have also, the town has also scheduled a meeting with the executive office.
Well, I think he's, just told us that's in process.
Well, he's meeting with Kristen Kasner and Bruce Tarr, but I was at a meeting with Kristen Kasner, and she basically said there's a 2 to 3 month window to get an appointment with the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, and I thought, wow, those people think they're important.
I would take that with a grain of sand.
Well, whatever. I mean, I'm sure that are a lot of communities knocking at their door saying, please, help us, or
conversely. That works to our benefit. I mean, if everybody's going to them and they're going, we're swamped with.
Requests. I understand the logic. I just, there's always a cautionary tale, because even the best laid plans sometimes go awry.
Of course.
So,
they'll blow up on you.
Yeah.
That goes without saying. You shouldn't be in this, you can't be in this arena without expecting to get kicked in the shins or other locations.
Okay, let's move on to, I think we've covered that. Well, actually, Emil, would you be able to make a few remarks? I mean, I don't think anyone at town meeting is going to be overly concerned with the downtown plan. I think there are other matters that are likely to engender significantly more controversy.
I know the people with the citizens petitions have a 13-minute video presentation. So that's going to be the big topic here. So I don't know where we come in the discussion.
Well, maybe I can talk with you on the phone outside the meeting.
It needs to be short, succinct, to the point, and out.
Patrick, what I was saying was that if you could also let Rick and Emil know whether or not our representatives have been able to schedule a meeting with the executive office. I think that might be helpful to know, or what their efforts are. I mean, I remember the last meeting with Kristen Kasner. I don't know if at that time she did reach out to them. She might have gotten a meeting with them had she asked for it, because of their 2 to 3 month window. But I actually think that would be advisable. And they may be being more flexible, because obviously it's unclear which way the SJC might rule. It's strictly one of statutory interpretation, and I have to say, my review of the statute versus the guidelines, there are definitely legal issues that can be raised, because the statutory language is really quite unambiguous, but the guidelines, by providing for districts all over the place, are entirely different. So if one read the statute, you would never imagine that you could have a district, for example, in the east side of Milton and also on the west side of Milton. So there are potential problems there, and but we won't discuss it anymore. But if anybody is interested in the complaint, I have it.
The article for the comprehensive plan for town vote is for $125,000.
Right. Budget's working, HDC is kicking in 25.
Is a kicker.
I think under the circumstances, Pat, we're going to defer talking about stormwater management regulations. I don't believe Alex is here anyway. I would have hoped he would have excused himself by now. I think we're going to have to devote virtually an entire meeting to the regulations and pour through them, really, look at them very closely. And we can't do that in 20 minutes. It's too ambitious. So, other than that, I know, Patrick, you attached some minutes. Probably no one has had a chance to read them. I know I sent you the April 4th minutes today.
on these.
I'm not thinking that it would be the best idea. I know I reviewed the April 4th, 2023 minutes. I don't believe I have reviewed the November 21st, 2023 minutes, or the December 5th minutes. I have reviewed the October 17th and the December 5th minutes. No, sorry, the April 4th, 2023, and October 17th, 2023 minutes. But I have not reviewed November 21st,
So I'd make a motion that we
December 5th.
accept the October 7th, 2023 meeting minutes and the April 4th, 2023 minutes.
October 17th, is that the one?
April
April 4th
4th,
and
2023,
October 17th.
and October 17th, 2023 minutes.
Second?
When I call your name, please indicate whether you assent. Pat Norton?
Aye.
Jonathan Poor?
Jonathan Poor, aye.
Bill Wheaton?
Bill Wheaton, aye?
Emil Dahlquist?
Aye.
Beth Herr?
Aye.
Rick Mitchell?
Aye.
Marnie Crouch? Aye. I'm working on minutes, just so you know. And so we'll see about these others.
What's the attorney's name? It's Myron
Myron Walters.
Walters. Do you guys, I don't really care about the fee, honestly, I just try to make it simple. Does the town office I'm fine. It's just 500 or 1,000. Just get them. That's fine. Yes.
Okay. So we'll add the minutes from 11/21/23, 12/5/23, 12/19/23 to our next meeting on April 9th, along with any other minutes that might come our way.
I got a raft of them posted with the clerk today,
I sent you, I think, 15 or more.
several, yeah.
Yep.
And Corinne loves you for that.
We have some plans. Once we conclude, I want to make sure people don't forget we need some signatures.
Are these the new A&Rs?
Yes, sir. Another question, if we are not meeting on the 2nd, but meeting on the 9th, when would we do the following meeting?
Oh, the
On
same.
the 30th.
On the 30th. So, yeah, the 9th and the 30th, and that makes more sense. It was
Right.
just an oversight on everyone's part to schedule the 2nd rather than the 9th. I don't know what the logic was, because
Right.
I don't see any holidays or anything on the 9th, so, anyhow, we corrected that, and I think that'll give us a lot more time to get our ducks in order on the athletic fields. With respect to that latest bowler iteration, Patrick, I noticed that, the firm is proposing 49.8 acres and 756 unit capacity. In the materials you sent, is that now cast in concrete?
It is not. It is not. And in fact, as our consultant gets hired, I fully anticipate they're going to reevaluate the placement that Bowler I directed them to do. And that's part of the reason why we're hiring this new set of consultants to do the form-based /3A work, is to make sure that we're all copacetic with what the 3A district should be. The reason why I chose this is it keeps the density where our density now is. And I felt like that was going to be more attainable rather than placing it elsewhere,
Right.
like at Gordon Conwell. So, that's why I had them consolidate the district. What they had done earlier is push it out all the way to Union Street, and this only goes about half that distance.
Right. But the 3A district and the town center area where the form-based code would be proposed are not identical.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, I think we've exhausted one another. I know, I'm ready to call it a day. So, absent any further board business or discussion, there's only one thing left to do.
A motion to adjourn?
Bingo. Pat Morton,
Aye.
Jonathan Poor,
Jonathan Poor, aye.
Will Wheaton,
Bill Wheaton, aye?
Emil Dahlquist,
Emil Dahlquist, aye.
Beth Herr,
Aye.
Rick Mitchell,
Aye.
Marnie Crouch, aye.